everybody. Welcome to the Jam Yearbook. I'm Jim.
And I'm Matt. We're here to take you on a journey through the years as we explore the music in our lifetime and the impact it's had on us in the world we've lived in.
Welcome to version 2004. Right away, if you listen to last week's show, you'll notice I had a better experience this week.
I'm happy you were able to get out of the echo storm from last week.
Yeah.
2004 was a great year to look back on.
Yeah, it was. I felt like Dorothy in Kansas last week with all the echo around me.
Yeah.
And definitely 2004 was something I really kind of still felt connected to. If you listen to version 2005, please go listen to version 2005 if you hadn't.
Please.
You would hear that I was kind of disconnected. I didn't really have that same feeling I had looking at 2004. This may be the final year I was experiencing that youthful need to explore and celebrate new music as it came along. There was great pop, there was great rock, and there was great indie in this year for me. But before we get there, we're going to take that moment to talk about some people that we lost. There were some seriously influential people who passed in 2004. And I'll start straight away with the one and only, the undeniable genius of the man that is Ray Charles. Is there anything else really to say?
No.
He was a legend, and he was... Yeah, and he was known, his nickname was the Genius. It's amazing to witness everything he was able to accomplish in life as a blind black man from the South. He blended soul, R&B, and gospel music flawlessly, and he could even dip in and out of country music when he felt like it. I think he had a couple of Willie Nelson albums.
Yes.
Yeah. There are a few monumental moments when the hair can stand up on the back of everyone's necks and goose pimples will rise from the arms of even the most stoic people. And that's when Brother Ray was singing. He liked to be called Brother Ray by his friends. I hope that's okay for me to say. I didn't know him, but I just want to say that.
Yeah.
His renditions of Georgia on My Mind and America the Beautiful are the standards everything else is held to. He contributed to the civil rights movement in the 1960s by refusing to play to segregated audiences. Yeah, Brother Ray, he had his demons, addiction and relationship difficulties, but his legacy and imprint on music matches any other musical icon. He died of liver failure on June 10th at the age of 73.
Yeah. Here's a drink to Brother Ray.
Yeah, to Brother Ray.
Okay. And now we're going to move on to Johnny Ramone. Everyone and everything Ramone, I don't think was widely appreciated until they were gone. Joey in 2001, Dee Dee in 2002, and Johnny in 2004. And I'm going to include Tommy Ramone in here because, like the idiot that I am, last week, everything going on, I completely blanked that Tommy Ramone died in 2014. Yeah. But Johnny, he was, referred to as the drill sergeant in the band, being raised by a father who he was a strict disciplinarian. And Johnny, he was the king of the guitar downstroke. It had to be he had to be so disciplined just to be able to play downstroke bar chords for more than an hour. That's really hard to do. His playing style, he liked to say it was influenced by Zeppelin's Communication Breakdown. He paid that inspiration forward by influencing countless guitarists and bands. He passed away at 55 after a 5-year battle with prostate cancer.
Oh, wow.
And Tommy, he was initially the band's manager and Joey was the drummer, but Joey had trouble keeping up with the pace of the band behind the drum kit. Okay. And they found out he could sing. So like, Joey, you sing, and nobody wanted to play drums. So Tommy, never having played drums before, zero experience or ability, he took the kit.
That's amazing.
He just sat down and the job was his. He was the drummer and the co-producer for the first 3 Ramones albums, and he wrote or co-wrote Blitzkrieg Bop. And he went on, even after he left the band, I believe he came back and produced, 1 or 2 more albums with them. And he was 65 when he passed away from bile duct cancer.
Oh, wow. Thank you for bringing him to the show. Sorry, we forgot about him in 2014. And then we come across somebody else that was just phenomenal in a different genre completely, and that's Dimebag Darrell.
Yeah, really sad death because there was no reason other than someone else's instability.
No, it's so tragic. Darrell Lance Abbott, he was shot by a deranged fan while he was performing with his band Damage Plan. I can't claim to have been a big fan of Pantera, the band that he came up with. If you don't know that name, then you were not around in the 90s because everybody knew who Pantera was. but they're one of those bands that I've appreciated a little bit more retrospectively. Have you ever had a band that sounded really hard to you when they first came out, but then after 10 years pass and all this other music comes along, you go back and you listen to, and suddenly they don't sound as hard?
Yeah, it's like classic rock.
It is. Well, you know, I remember when Metallica came along in the 80s and it just sounded like the most aggressive music you'd ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
But now it doesn't. Now you can really hear like the melodic symphonies. And I think Pantera will have influenced metal in the way that it moved forward that way. And definitely with Dimebag's guitar playing. I can't deny that, you know, he's one hell of a guitar player and one of the best of his generation. A couple of weeks before he died, he was hanging out at Eddie Van Halen's 5150 studio. And he asked Eddie if he could play the Bumblebee guitar that he'd seen on the back of the Van Halen 2 album.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie said, sure. So he jammed on it, had a great time. And at the end of the day, he said to Eddie, can I get a copy of that? And I don't know if there was an agreement that he was going to get a copy or not. It was only 2 weeks later that Dimebag was shot, gunned down in the club. And at his funeral, Eddie Van Halen showed up with that very guitar, and he put it in the casket and buried him with it. And when he put it in the casket, he said, an original deserves an original. The world lost Dimebag Darrell at the age of 38 years old. Just this week, I decided, well, and also influenced by our metal episode with Sandy, to listen to Damage Plan and find out what they were all about. And you can definitely hear that he was an exceptional and original player. It would have been amazing to see what he could have done further down the road.
Oh yeah, it makes. I have no doubt that Damage Plan would have achieved the same heights as Pantera.
Yeah,
based on Dimebag's guitar playing.
Yeah, it was
amazing.
amazing.
Really well respected.
All right, so let's get on to the music and the happy stuff. We can move forward here. So going back, what was your first impression looking at 2004?
There's a ton of good music around, but if I had to pick one album that made 2004 special, it's The Killer's debut, Hot Fuss.
Yeah, absolutely. What an amazing album.
Oh yeah.
It's hit after hit.
Yeah, they just keep coming.
Yeah, I would dare consider it to be the best debut album of any rock band in the 2000s.
I couldn't argue against that. I mean, I love that album. I've gotten hours of enjoyment from that thing. From the very beginning, it grabbed me.
I have a funny story. I had a friend whose band recorded in the same studio the Killers recorded Hot Fuss at. His band and the Killers, they were swapping day-night shifts recording, and they'd cross over and they'd share recordings of what they'd gotten done and accomplished. And he admits that he didn't see them coming. He would sit down with them on the couch and listen to some of their songs and be like, all right, I guess that's cool. I don't get it, but yeah, they're doing their thing. He was so focused on his own, and that happens as a musician. To this day, retrospectively, he realizes how ridiculously foolish he was.
That's a great experience to look back on, though.
Yeah.
You know, where were you when? You know, and the Killers, they were creating their own thing. There's a lot of layers in these songs, you know, little keyboard hooks throughout. Great melodies on all these songs. The early U2 guitar sound, new wave sounding keyboards.
Yep.
And it's a great sing-along album. The Killers, their overall sound, it's a little bit overdriven and raw sounding. That more raw sound was kind of a thing, you know, in the early 2000s with rock bands. Franz Ferdinand shared that. Sort of the Hives, the Vines, they were a little more straight rock and roll, but I lumped them in here because they were all in my constant rotation, all from different parts of the world too. Scotland, Australia, Sweden, America, but they shared this high energy, this more raw sound. And when music can give me bits of garage rock and new wave, I'm more likely going to dive in.
Yeah. And just a little bit off note, I think it's really interesting you bring up that they come from different parts of the world, because we find when we get to the late 2000s, early 2010s, that there are a lot of those kind of indie acoustic bands out there creating music that come from different areas around the world, but they have that sound that's kind of being shared universally. And this is the sound that was going on at the time. You're right, the Hives, you know, and Franz Ferdinand, who you just mentioned, I'll go on about them. Their big debut was in 2004. That raw sound was there that you talked about, but it was also driven by disco beats. Yeah. We've talked about our good friend Max Martin quite a bit. And I'm surprised his name isn't dominating 2004, to be honest with you. Like it seems he's done in every other recent year. But his country, Sweden's known for several great producers. It's funny. When they got big, I came to Scotland and found out Franz Ferdinand had come from Glasgow. So I went around and started talking to people about music, and I expected them to tell me about how they saw Franz Ferdinand coming up in the club scene. Nope. As soon as these guys met in different smaller bands they were playing in and got together, they realized that they had a formula for success, and they traveled to Sweden, where Max Martin's from, to work with one of these great producers, Tor Johansson, who was behind the success of the band The Cardigans, who were big in the UK at the time. When they got big, Glaswegians were like, who the hell are these guys? Because here they are from Glasgow. True to the name of Scotland, though, they are loved here. They're playing the Hydro in Glasgow in the next month, and it's a sold-out show. They can headline any festival here. This was a really fun album, and it's cool to see them still banking on the early success they had, even if they didn't have the longevity in the States that the Killers have had.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that it almost sounds like, yeah, they got together, and it sounds like they didn't do any local gigs in Scotland.
Yeah.
They just went and started recording an album.
When they showed up on a stage in Scotland, they were on a big stage.
Yeah, that's weird. That's odd. But, a lot of these sounds, the Hives, the Vines, all this, they were new sounds to me, but I was easily swayed to return to familiar sounds. When Reverend Horton Heat released Revival, I was hooked back into them big time. And I probably annoyed everyone in the 90s with my insistence on listening to Cake whenever I could. They are the bands that I've seen the most live, probably more so Cake. Reverend Horton Heat's pretty close, but Cake, it's just fun to sit around and get the bass out and play along, and there's usually a lot of interesting sounds in the background of their songs too. Pressure Chief came out later in the year than all this raw sounding music that we were just talking about, but it dominated my listening once it did. In the 90s and early 2000s, Cake and Reverend Horton Heat, they were like my security blanket. I could always wrap them around myself, and everything would just fall into place, and I'd be really happy. And for the trifecta, I'll throw Johnny Cash in there for this time period. It seems like every time you turn around, they release another compilation of his music. Love, God, Murder came out in 2004. It was a good collection that gave some attention to some of his lesser known songs like The Ballad of Barbara and Highway Patrolman.
Yeah.
And it was released in 2003, but the Unearthed box set, that was never far out of my reach in 2004. I have one confession to make about 2004. I listened to the whole album of American Idiot for the first time this week.
Wow.
I know. Green Day, they just hadn't fit my life for a while at this point. I had gotten what I needed out of them and just moved on to other things. It's not like I never heard anything off it. It was one of those records you couldn't escape, and it's had longevity. I liked it, but I missed the way Mike Dirnt used to play bass. He used to have like these more lighthearted bass lines that kind of moved all over the place. But I don't really think those fit the darker tone that was on this record.
When this album came out, I was commuting back and forth to Burlington from Rutland. And so I had enough time to listen to a whole album, and I had Sirius radio in the car. And I remember listening to the whole thing from beginning to end and getting home and calling up my friend Lenny, who I played music with for years, who had been a Green Day fan in the early days, to tell him that they had just recorded an album that was going to be the biggest thing in the world. This is an album that a band makes when they've reached a crossroads. They can either keep trying to do the same thing, or they can do this. They can try to become the biggest band in the world. And they aimed high, and I think that they achieved what they were aiming for. Yeah, it is definitely different than what they were doing in their early days, but the songs are still very catchy, radio friendly, just like their early pop punk stuff they were doing.
Definitely.
They got older and experienced different things in life, and their sound matured, and that's going to happen. Wake Me Up When September Ends is an absolute radio friendly song. But Billy Joel wrote it about getting the news that his father had passed away and the shock that he was in. That's something that I can relate to. I think they were victims kind of the success of this album. It got so big that fatigue kicked in, and so many new fans jumped on board that the older fans that were having fun with the early stuff felt like they'd lost that ownership and they weren't enjoying it anymore. And I can understand that. That's happened with bands that I've listened to. But if I were Green Day, I wouldn't have any regrets with writing or releasing this album at all.
Hell no. But that's kind of what's great about American Idiot and other bands who keep putting out material. They're able to create new fans as some of the older ones move away, because how many bands have you gotten into, but your tastes change, other
Mm-hmm.
new things come out, and it's the new shiny thing, and that grabs your attention. But in a way, I'm kind of jealous about that. I enjoy finding a new band only to find they have a back catalog to go through, and I can discover loads of new favorite songs.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
and the older you get, those kind of moments are a little more rare,
Mm-hmm.
but they're really magical moments when you discover a new band.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things, is discovering new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing on with more music of 2004, one of the more unbelievable things was the popularity of Modest Mouse.
Yeah, I don't know what you think of Modest Mouse saying that. We might disagree a bit. I'm not a huge fan. There are a couple of songs I really like, and there's a song from the 2010s. I think I told you at one point that I might take to the song list, but I can tolerate them. I think maybe more than you. I don't know. Float On was a really good alt radio tune, and some of their stuff was like acoustic punk to me. It's out there, but maybe we'll have to disagree on this.
Oh no, not at all. No disagreement.
Okay.
In fact, I thought you were going to say the opposite. I thought that they were not going to be your cup of tea. Float On, it's the most atypical song to become a big hit, because it does plod along a little bit, and I wouldn't call it a sing-along song, but I think it's the energy on the record again.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like it's a performance. You don't feel like you're being lied to.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's authentic. It is.
Yep. So one thing that I think you and I can really agree on is we're really not modern country fans, are we?
That's probably our most agreeable sentiment in all
Yeah.
of music.
Yeah, yeah. But in 2004, it takes albums from Loretta Lynn and Willie Nelson to make country relevant to us.
Yeah.
At 72, I couldn't believe how strong Loretta Lynn's voice was and the control that she still had. It was
Hmm.
amazing. And pairing her with Jack White was genius.
Definitely a stroke of genius because she's authentic and Jack White is still authentic, no matter what you think of his music today. Loretta Lynn, she's an icon of country music and she shines. So I'm glad you brought this up. That collaboration was amazing. And Willie Nelson, really,
Yeah.
he could sing the alphabet, and I'd listen to it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He's just that interesting. He could play it on trigger and I'd be happy. You know, you never know what you're going to get from Willie Nelson. He kind of dabbles in, jazz, or he'll do an album of instrumental stuff. Except for a couple songs in the middle, this was nice and mellow. It was really good nighttime listening.
Yeah, definitely.
But then there was some good anytime listening. The Eagles of Death Metal.
Oh yeah.
What a great band. I
Mhm.
usually take the bands with Josh Homme in them. I don't know what he does with songwriting, but it hits a sweet spot with me.
Oh, it does. This is one of those bands that back in that time I prejudged by the name. I saw death metal and I was like, nah, this is not for me. I was not even going to pick this up off the shelf or bring it home. They're so good. Peace, Love, and Death Metal. I think if this album had come out in the 1980s, they would have gained that huge cult music status like REM and The Cure. They don't sound like those bands, from the 80s by any means, but it has that kind of uniqueness that stands out from everything, originality that would have stood out in that era. And I think whatever era they'd come through, we should just be glad that we have them because they're a great band.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly what it is. They're just originals.
Yeah. All right. So you're talking about the originality of Modest Mouse and Eagles of Death Metal. There was another band that came along that was just really amazing, in my opinion, in 2004. And they really only lasted for a short period. They're a flash in the pan. Supergroup, Velvet Revolver. Like Audio Slave, there was probably a limit as to what we're going to squeeze out of them. I think this happens when supergroups get together. They have this ability to be really amazing for a few songs on an album and be very exceptional. And I don't know if it's ego, if it's too much familiarity with what they've done before, but for some reason, supergroups don't have longevity.
Yeah, I think it's because, when you get the supergroup, you get a lot of people who are used to maybe being the main songwriter.
Yeah.
And when they have to kind of share that spotlight, maybe some of them can't deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
or they have interest in just doing a lot of other projects.
Yeah.
Or it just doesn't work.
It is fun to see artists make this caliber of an album, though. Most of the time it doesn't work out well. And I don't think it's an album that people go back and listen to, but it was great in its time. Slash's guitar solo on Slither, the way it comes in and hits, classic Slash, sounds fucking great.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be the last great thing Scott Weiland did before dying too young.
Yeah, but I going in, when you hear who's involved in it, I don't think you're really expecting them to break new ground. And bands don't always need to do that. They made a great record, and I think if they did something different, everybody would have been disappointed.
Yeah, you're right.
You know,
you're right.
I think they did the right thing, and yeah, Slash kicks ass.
Yeah. And then there was Kings of Leon, which I kind of got schooled on this week, because when we were talking about bands and albums we're going to talk about, you brought them up. And my experience with Kings of Leon really is Sex on Fire and Use Somebody, and they're great songs, but this doesn't come along, I think, until what, 2008,
Something
2007,
like that,
2008. So at first I was very dismissive, and I was like, oh man, this is too early. Nobody cared about them in 2004. And then this was a shit statement, because I went and looked on Wiki and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This album that came out was listed as the 39th best album of all the 2000s in Rolling Stone magazine. It charted number 3 in the UK. It was number 5 here in Scotland. It explains to me now why when Kings of Leon come here and play, they're playing massive stadiums in the UK.
Yes.
They have big tours here. So I'll admit I haven't yet, but I will. I promise, Matt. I'm going to go give this a little more attention. And well, yeah, maybe after the show, it's time to do it before we get on to something else.
Yeah, and you're right. They found success earlier in the UK than the States. Their first 2 albums each sold more than twice the amount in the UK than the US.
Which, if you think of population, that's amazing.
I know, but maybe there was just what was going on over here, the competition. Maybe they just couldn't break in.
Yeah.
Maybe for some reason they weren't getting that kind of coverage. But Aha Shake Heartbreak, it was released in the UK in November of 2004, but it wasn't released in the States until February of 2005.
Oh, so this was well planned.
Yeah, because they knew that the UK is where their bread and butter was. They knew they had it in, and Sex on Fire is when the US sales first edged out the UK.
Yep.
For whatever reason, wide early US acceptance just wasn't there with the band.
Yeah. Well, okay. So moving on from some of the bands and the music, we're going to talk about a couple of events that took place. And this is going to be kind of fun, because 2004 was one of those years that when you bring this up, if you've ever seen that meme of Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the television screen, you know, oh shit, I see that right there. Right there. 2004 brought a new terminology into existence: wardrobe malfunction. Literally 2 days ago, one of my side scroll stories on my phone was, oh, so-and-so experiences wardrobe malfunction.
Yes, I saw that.
Well, here it comes. It was probably 2 different people. It probably wasn't the same as what I was looking at. This is where it comes from. Anyone who witnessed the halftime show featuring Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson knows exactly where they were when this phrase got created. I'm not going to get into whose fault it was, planned or unplanned, because there's all that talk and conspiracy. It's funnier to imagine all the beer that got spit out and mothers running over to cover their kids' eyes. I remember turning to my friends and saying, did we just see Janet's boob? It's funny in retrospect, and I think the world overreacted to just a boob. It was freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it was a shame too, because it seemed to crash Janet's career. Well, Justin Timberlake's trajectory just continued upward, even though he's the guy who reached over and snapped her top off. Again, not to blame anybody, but this is just an observation.
Yeah, everybody remembers their first time, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how long this conversation went on in this country. It was just ridiculous. Everybody wanted to be the morality police, but at the same time, and you won't say it, but I'll say it, there had to be a plan. I mean, come on. And I don't think they realized the shitstorm that would be unleashed over a boob.
A boob.
Right? But it was a real shitstorm. And really, it may have crashed Janet's career, but really she was kind of arcing down a little bit. I think she was more billed as like a legacy legendary act, and
She
Justin
was.
was on, on his way up. I think it was maybe a way to more promote Justin's career, by attaching him to Janet.
I will say this. Usually, if you're an artist and you appear on the Super Bowl and you have a new album coming out, then that album will have some success. Janet had an album come out 2 months after this happened during the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh, okay.
There was a complete, yeah, you don't even know about it. It was a complete failure. It was a bomb. It probably didn't even get promoted by the record company by that point.
I was too hot at that point.
Yeah,
And
no
I
kidding.
remember seeing Timberlake questioned about this stuff even a year later, and he's just like, oh no, 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 no. He, he wanted to cap that can of worms and just never revisit it again.
Yeah, yeah. I wish there was a way that I could within the podcast just put that Leonardo DiCaprio meme up of this.
I know.
Right there. Look. So there were a couple of bands that broke up in 2004, and between you and I don't think there was any loss when Creed called it a day.
No.
Most of the guys in the band that already moved over to the new brand Alter Bridge, and obviously to shift away from Scott Stapp, I have never met anyone who said, I miss Creed, even if they liked them at the time.
They have become shunned almost universally.
Yeah.
It's almost like people are embarrassed to admit that they own their albums or that they were ever a thing. I remember a common argument against them was people were kind of saying that their songs had religious undertones.
Can you take me higher?
Okay, Jim Bowen singing there. I love it. I don't know one way or the other about their religious stuff. But it's not like they were Striper. Yep. But then there became the whole joke about, was it the Arms Wide Open song where he's walking around with that flowing shirt and the wife beater?
Mm-hmm.
That became kind of like, this is probably pre-memes, but if there were memes around at this time, I'm sure that would have been a hot one.
No, definitely. And then there was another band breakup. And to me, this was a bit of a farce. So look, Phish fans, don't come after Matt and I. You people are vicious on the internet. We are both from the Northeast Kingdom. We're from the Newport, Vermont area. This is our hometown. We both spent time in the Coventry area, and we have friends that live there. We probably could have taken back roads to get to this show without any problem, while everybody else was cutting about on the main routes. But there's no way they should have been planning a concert of that size up there. And by announcing that it was going to be their last and final concert, their fans, even their casual ones, headed there in droves. Yeah, there's a highway going up through the middle of Vermont, but every road leading into where this was 15 miles in or out from the highway. It was just basically a 2-car road. The traffic jam backed up 20 miles, back 5 miles down the highway. And I know people that were deciding to abandon their cars. I know a few people who just turned around and went home. It was an absolute mess. Now, if I was a Phish fan and I made it to the show and they never played again, I would have been really happy to have experienced this. But 2 years later, they released an album and they're touring again. Look, I understand they had some internal issues in the band and some things going on, and it's great that they were able to get through everything that they did. But it would have been wiser possibly to announce that they were finished after the show because of where they were playing and all of the chaos that it caused. And that's why I call it a farce. They made that mistake in how they chose to go about it.
Yeah, never say never. I mean, we see that with a ton of bands, right? Last tour ever, and then we get back together when we either need the money or realize we've had enough time in between and we don't hate each other's guts anymore. Or at least can tolerate each other for another 2-year tour.
Or they go on the final tour and they make enough money that they're like, well, we got to go on another one.
Exactly, right? Greed, yeah. But I remember sitting in a bar in Essex, here, not too far from my house, and watching the news coverage of this. I think Mark was up and we were watching it at the bar, and it was a mess, but it was awesome that it was Coventry, Vermont. Yeah. Coventry was getting all this attention. It borders Newport, our hometown. So there was a sort of pride that a spotlight was shining on Northern Vermont. It was interesting to hear all the comments about how stupid people were, though. Just everybody and the bar had an opinion, obviously. And it was
Of
usually
course.
dirty hippies,
Yeah.
trustafarians. God, geez, why don't they just leave them alone? Okay, have another bud.
Uh-huh.
And while it was when you can get caught up in it, it was hard to disagree because you can I like to try to at least envision why somebody has an opinion, but I couldn't help but wish I was there just for that experience. And I don't usually take that approach with events, but it was because of the location. I could
Yeah.
have just parked at my parents' house and, hitchhiked or walked the last
Oh, it would
5
have been
minutes.
easy to get there from where
Yeah.
we were.
Yeah.
My high school girlfriend lived in Coventry. In the right time at the right day, I would have been able to just go straight over from her house to see
Yeah.
this show. So just so you know, Phish fans, that's why we are experts on this show and where it took place. This is not dismissive of Phish. We'll do that in a different episode. All right, Matt, let's get away from the tales of our hometown. Here we go. It is time to get into our 5 from 2004. I had a lot of fun going back and looking at some of these songs, and I'm happy to share my 5. But since you chose 2004, thank you for picking another year in the 2000s, you chicken shit last week. It's up to you to go first. So what's your first song from 2004?
It shall be the Walkman and the Rat.
Nice.
The Walkman, they fit right in with the Hives, the Vines, Killers, Franz Ferdinand, all that raw sound, great energy. They're just like all those bands. It sounds like I'm listening to a performance, like a band just went into a studio, cranked this out, and they just fed off each other's energy, what they were all doing.
Yeah, I think as far as a band goes, this is a one-hit wonder type song for them, but it's such a great, signature song that a band can have. I saw them on this tour, Open for Cake. They're very different and a little too eclectic for my taste and probably the audience that was there to watch Cake. But this was their radio song, and you're absolutely correct. What you're hearing on the track is exactly what you're going to hear live, and I've got a lot of respect for that.
So were we at the same show? Higher Ground?
Were you at the one where the Walkman opened for them?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were there.
Oh my God.
That was the Cake show where they played not a single hit song off of any of their albums. The only songs they played that I recognized the whole night, because I'm not a huge Cake fan, were Daria and Frank Sinatra. But I brought Linda to the show and expected to hear The Distance or Short Skirt or I Will Survive or just anything that would have been slightly familiar.
Yeah.
And they didn't play any of that shit.
I can't believe we didn't see each other at that show.
And it was $40 for that ticket.
Yeah.
Which is a steep ticket to see a band.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what I think it was, though?
Yeah, I know what it was. You loved it. Fuck off.
No, I did love it. But Jeff McRae, he can be a little bit of a dick.
He was moody that night. You could tell.
Well, just about every time I've seen him, he's been a little bit moody. The crowd was not into the Walkman. They wanted nothing to do with him. They wanted Cake, and the crowd kind of let them know. And so I think it was their, or at least Jeff McRae's way of saying, oh, you don't want them? Well, you know what? You're not going to get The Distance.
Yeah.
You're not going to get the hits tonight, folks.
And we didn't get it.
No. All right. So what's your number one?
My number one, well, it is going to be the number one track off the Killers album, Hot Fuss, we talked about earlier. But the song is not probably a song many people would know if they're digging through or their head, thinking all the hit songs. It is Jenny Was a Friend of Mine. Track number 2 is Mr. Brightside, and it's followed by Smile Like You Mean It, followed by Somebody Told Me, followed by all these things that I've done.
Oh.
This may be the most overlooked title track of all time, because I'm sure that when people put the CD on, they went just to Mr. Brightside right away.
Mm-hmm.
In case you didn't know, Mr. Brightside is the longest running top 100 single here in the UK. 307 weeks over 5 years.
Oh my God.
So you know why that's going to happen.
Holy shit, that's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. But Jenny Was a Friend of Mine is such a cool song. Right away, the Killers let you know they're going to have songs that have storytelling and narrative. And this happens further down the line in more of their albums than just kind of the hits that come after this song on it. The bass leads throughout. It's a great pop and bass line. The song is part of a murder trilogy. It's all part of real life events. You're a guy who likes concept albums. Come on.
Yeah.
This is really cool. I think it deserves to be on the playlist because it shows how great the Killers can be when you're not being fed the songs from the radio.
Oh, you could have picked any song and I would have been on board, but Jenny is a great song to kick off this album. It's one of their best songs, period. It's definitely one of my favorite. It's just got a huge sound. Really, the whole album does, but it's almost an eerie sound to it.
Oh,
as
it definitely.
well.
Yeah, it fits that mood. I mean, when you find
Oh
out
yeah.
that it's a murder, themed
Yeah.
song, it's just you listen to it differently and you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, it takes on a different light, especially those keyboards in the
Yeah.
background. It's very eerie sounding.
But that bass line, boom, boom, boom,
Oh, it's
boom,
awesome
boom,
bass line.
It sounds like like a horror movie kind of going on, something happening. So my number one, awesome. I'm happy to bring it here. I say it's awesome. That's all that matters.
Yeah. You're 100% correct.
Thank you. I'm validated. Thank you. Matt, what is your number two?
I'm going to go with Franz Ferdinand and Take Me Out. This is a great anthemic rocker. That guitar riff is easily identifiable. It's become almost iconic for the time. Audiences sing that guitar part. It's so simple, but that's what makes things awesome is when you don't overthink it. You just crank it out. But there's a whole minute of anticipation and buildup before the song really kicks in. And the drum beat makes the crowd just want to bounce along. And as soon as it clicks into that hi-hat hit and every other, on the offbeat and that bass drum just pounding, people just are into it immediately.
Yeah, and I talked about how it has that kind of like disco beat thing going on.
Yeah, it does.
It's also a really unconventional song when it comes to like chorus, verse, chorus. It doesn't work that way. It's completely unique in how the song's constructed. But you're right as well about how people sing that guitar part.
Yeah.
I've been at other concerts over here where we've been waiting for the band to come on stage. And so the playlist is playing. And I've seen audiences get worked up in the crowd and start singing along just to this because they're ready for the party to start. And they're yeah, a fantastic song. And yeah, a great addition to the list. And Franz Ferdinand, good stuff.
Cool. Thank you. So what is your number two?
My number two is going to be Scissor Sisters, Take Your Mama.
You said that with a little bit of sass.
Yeah, well, I think you should say Sister Scissors with a little bit of sass. This is one of those songs I heard on the radio for years, and it just kind of grew on me. And one day I finally was sitting there and I was like, I need to find out who does this. And I went and Shazammed it. And I thought my phone was broken. I didn't really care for much else that I'd heard from them. I don't feel like dancing or some of their other stuff. It's not necessarily even for the cheesy music that I like, it's not my thing 100%. I've not really ever been turned on to their music though, or had much interest. And this song is really fun. It's got a timeless acoustic feel with the beat. It's something that sounds like it could come maybe from the, mid 70s with the guitar lick going on in the background. There's that electric lead taking place behind stuff. Unfortunately, it's followed on the album by a cover of Comfortably Numb. And then immediately I don't like them again because that may be my least favorite cover of all time. It really affects my soul. It hurts my ears. But Take Your Mama, it's a damn good song.
I never listened to them back then, and I did judge them by the name. Am I getting another Indigo Girls? Which just wasn't my thing. But this is a great pop song. And it's a little reminiscent of George Michael's Freedom 90 at times, the piano, and I can kind of hear echoes of the bass line, but that's fine because I really love that song. And I was enjoying this album until Comfortably Numb came on. Thank God it was the third song. So I was like, nope, we're done with this.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You destroyed yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That was unnecessary. But Take Your Mama, that is a good, fun song.
Yeah, it is. It is. One of those unique standout songs on an album from a band you might not normally pay attention to.
Yes. Every band must have a song that we like, right?
Yes. Well, maybe.
Maybe.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
So there we go. My number two, It's time for your number 3. What's it gonna be?
We're gonna go with the Zootons and Pressure Point. Great fucking band. This is a catchy song that
Yeah.
who. I mean, you just hear it, you just want to sing along. And I like the way the things it just kind of that's not quiet, but it's sparse, and then they all come in, and then it's sparse again, and then they all come in, and the saxophone just adds an extra layer in the song. It's kind of missed on a few songs where you sometimes bands don't think outside the box of guitars and bass as to what to add to a song or in a band in general.
I really like the song. It's another one of those songs that's a UK festival song. People really get into it over here in the band.
Cool.
Yeah. So great. The Zootons. And that's one of those bands you added to the playlist that I hope people go check out more of their music. So yeah.
Oh yeah, they're
Great.
definitely great. Good band. All right, Jim. So what do you have next?
My next song is going to be D12. The rap song is My Band. This is probably one of my favorite rap songs of all time. Eminem teams up with his homeboys from Detroit, and it's got hilarious results. These are probably the guys that are portrayed in the movie 8 Mile with Eminem. He's come up with them through his career. And it's really about the success of him told through the perspective of his bandmates other than the chorus. But it's all good fun about jealousy and feeling more worthy than him. Why is he so famous when I should be this and I should be that?
Why does my microphone not sound right?
Yeah. The beat and the music's so great too. I wish we'd actually gotten some more D12. I think it'd be a lot of fun to hear Eminem have done more with these guys.
This is another band I paid no attention to. This is the first time I heard it was this week. I wasn't very accepting of rap and Eminem in particular at that time, at least a lot of rap. I wouldn't open up to rap for a few more years, but I never opened up until to D12 until now. Because I just think I wanted my rap to be a little bit more serious than Eminem was on the surface. But when you dig into Eminem, there's a lot of shit going on there. But reading up on D12, I was appreciative of the communal aspect of the group, and it made me view the songs differently.
I think that he actually brought them around to do this song as kind of a tribute to how he came up with them and everything they did while they were young.
Yeah, I think so too.
And he knew he was at that stage in his career where he could, bring them up to that next level. So it was a lot of fun. The music video is good too. I recommend going and checking it out.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. All right. So there is my number 3. It's time for your number 4.
Okay, no hate mail, please. But this is Dogs Die in Hot Cars.
Boo!
I love you. Yeah, exactly. I know they do. I love dogs. Dogs die in hot cars. I love you because I have to. This is another great high energy song, probably because it wasn't too long ago that we covered 1979. And I got to listen to a lot of new wave and punk. And I was able to pick that sound out in a lot of these bands in 2004. And I never made that connection before. This song has got a great mix of ska and new wave. And I mean, if you want to know what the new wave part is, I mean, it's just that keyboard and that's going on. That is straight new wave tones to me.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those songs that makes me think eventually I'll make Matt a Cure fan.
No, that was VHS or beta.
A great song and very, very throwback to that time in new wave and a good comparison. So yeah, one of those bands as well that I'm happy you brought. There's, when people listen to the show and here comes Matt again with something I've never heard of, go check this out.
This is really good.
Yeah.
I like me some obscure stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
Okay, that is mine. What is your number 4?
My number 4, is not obscure. It's the Beastie Boys. The song is Open Letter to NYC, New York City. I can't ignore this song when we're doing 2004. After 9/11, the Beastie Boys kind of made this album as a tribute to their home city. It has all the great rhyme and flow that you'd expect from a Beastie song. After a few listens, you can't help but nod your head and rap along with them. It's a great tribute to their home city.
And they took this song seriously too, because you think about 9/11, right? That's not that long ago. And there's no throwaway snarky lines that I'm accustomed to hearing in their songs. This whole country was shaken by 9/11, but unless you were in New York City at the time, I don't think you can truly grasp the weight and the fear of those days. And
No.
this was a good, like, dust yourself off, New York. You're awesome. We're going to get through this kind of song.
Yeah. And I think as well as the album To the Five Boroughs that this came off of, it was about uniting the entire city. Whereas people within the city always have, well, I'm from Manhattan, I'm from Queens, I'm from Brooklyn, I'm from the Bronx.
Yeah, all
You
five
know,
boroughs.
yeah, they have these differences of opinion as to who the best and where they are. But the Beastie Boys brought them together as, well, no, you're New York City and you're the best because this is where you're
Yeah,
living.
exactly. And all the races and everything.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
tried to encapsulate it all. No,
Mhm.
we're all New York.
Yeah. So my number 4. So your number 5, how you closing out 2004?
I will close it out on a different note with Keen and Somewhere Only We Know.
Okay, yeah.
2004, it's not all about raw energy, right? This stuck out to me because it is different. Um, and that's not to say it's a total wet blanket. It does start out rather quiet, but it builds up as it goes until he's belting it out at the end. It's just got a great melody, and it's really kind of almost cathartic to sing along to, because you can just project and belt it out and get everything out of your system.
Yeah. That's a great song. Every once in a while, he'll show up on TV over here singing this song. And Keen are still popular. They play around the UK quite a bit still. And whenever he sings this song, it's almost like a moment where you just stop and you listen. He's a crooner, and
Yeah.
it works really well. Even in 2004, it fits right in with everything else. You need this to weave your way through all of that other different sound. So yeah, great choice for song number 5. I'm glad you brought it on.
Thanks. So now we are on to your last one. What is your number 5?
My number 5 is going to be, well, it's a cover song. It is by Placebo, and the song is called Running Up That Hill. Obviously, a Kate Bush song that recently charted due to Stranger Things on Netflix, but I like this version better than the original. It's just so moody, and Placebo is able to catch it with their own sound. I might not put the original on a playlist in the year that it came out due to conflicts with the other songs that were around, but I think this is the best of both worlds. A really good, understated band and a brilliant song that they're able to cover.
And it's fitting that this this is a fitting band. This is a fitting band to cover this song. They are able to keep that haunting quality of the original, but amplify it. And I agree with you that this is better because they slow it down,
Yep.
and the atmosphere that they create in the song actually makes you pay more attention to the words.
Oh, absolutely. You feel the lyrics. Yeah.
You do feel the lyrics on this version of the song. This was,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had never heard this version before, so I got stuck on this for a few days.
When I was
As
going through the, songs from 2004 and I came across it, there's actually an album of covers that Placebo did in 2004. And I recommend going and checking it out. It's kind of fun. There's some other good things on there.
Cool.
But I listened to this song, and I want to say I actually found it maybe 6 to 9 months ago before we were doing the show even. And just randomly, I posted it on Facebook as a song. I think I was doing a song of the day thing or something like that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had multiple comments from people that this was their favorite version of the song before the resurgence. So yeah, it deserves to be here. And Placebo is one of those bands that I'm torn on if I'll bring back to the show for a different song, because there's such a niche and such a unique sound that they're almost not fun to listen to because there's so much raw emotion going on in what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I've got to respect that. And we'll go back to 2014 where you accused me of just really enjoying fun, happy beats. And I'm going to be like, here you go, Matt, my number 5 in 2004.
There's always an exception to the rule.
There is.
That's my defense.
Yes. Jim can be moody.
Yes, he can. And just like that, our 5 is done, and that wraps up 2004.
It does. Yeah, there we go.
Relief. Yay.
All right.
I chose 2004. Jim,
Mhm.
it is your duty to tell us where we're going next.
All right. Well, I've got a couple of things I want to say here. We did 1991 and we split it into 2 episodes, and that may have been a mistake at the time. And we learned from that. And we're learning as we go through the show how to make sure it stays interesting for everybody listening. So instead of splitting big years, I've come up with an idea. And if you're happy to go with this, let's do it. I'm going to take us back to 1984.
Oh, you're going with 3 parts. That's awesome.
You
That's so
wish.
awesome of you.
You wish. I've got a better idea for you, though. Instead of 3 parts, what we're going to do is pick 10 songs apiece. So it gives us plenty of time to talk about a band, why we like them, the reason. It doesn't mean we can't talk about other bands, other influences, other things going on around it. But instead of having 1 episode with 5 songs and then a second half episode with 5 songs, we'll do 1 episode with 10, and we'll find a way to incorporate the things around it that we really want to bring to 1984.
You do realize how huge 1984 is, right?
I'm pretty sure you told me that most of your physical music collection comes from 1984.
And I haven't counted. That's just going off, hyperbole. But there's no way that another year beats it out. Maybe 83, I don't know, but 84 is, for people of our age, it's huge.
And I also decided it was going to be 10 songs because I was trying to count how many were on Purple Rain.
Yeah, there's my 10. There we go.
But yeah, 1984 is where we're going to go next. We hope the audience is happy with that. It's going to be nostalgic. It's going to be fun. And Matt and I are going to have 10 songs from that year that we're going to bring to the show.
Yeah, I can't wait to pick out 10 albums. That's going to be awesome.
And I'm going to pick every song off the Footloose soundtrack.
Oh, the only reason, we shared that. And the only reason I got tired of Footloose was because I played it so much. I had that 45 and I killed that song. I loved it so much.
How did you not get so fatigued from Bryan Adams' Heaven? We're going to have that there as well. That's 1984.
Yeah, but I was more actually Reckless. I was not as big of a fan of as Cuts Like a Knife.
Ah, yeah, but you had to have gotten tired of Summer of '69 at some point.
Jesus. Yes. I don't think I think it was MXPX that covered it in the 90s. I don't think it needed to be covered.
Oh, well, Heaven got covered over here by some dance floor electronica band.
Are you kidding me? Just go to a local bar. Somebody's playing Summer 69 back in the day. Right? Guilty.
Absolutely.
Guilty. Right?
All right. So I think it's my turn to wrap this up.
Take her away, Jim.
All right, here we go. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Jam Yearbook 2004. It's been a lot of fun to talk to Matt tonight. We didn't have as many disagreements as we did last week, which was kind of cool. And in fact, in a moment we thought we were going to disagree, we found out that we met in an equal space. So that's always okay.
There's been a ceasefire.
Yes, there's been a ceasefire. 1984, I don't think we'll have any issues with. I think we were probably standing on different sides of pop music and hair metal and things going on. But we grew up in that era where I think nostalgically we look back and have a lot of respect for all of it because basically you're just having fun. I'm just going to point out on video right now that actually the Ramones wings in the background look like devil horns out of your head.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And I have arrows shooting out of my head as well.
Yes. I'm going to have to make sure we get that up on TikTok so that people can see it. But I want to say thank you to everybody listening. It's been a pleasure to be here talking to you today, Matt. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Same here, Jim. Take care. And we'll see you all next time for version 1984.
Sounds great. Peace, love, and podcast.